even more so, thanks for E4Dev for existing. We love this community and this chance to talk about things. So I'll start off, well, the title of the talk is Increasing Energy Access in Off-Grid Communities, and DLAB, we have this, we're calling a roadmap or toolkit for local organizations to increase energy access. That's what I'll be talking most about, but I want to give a brief outline so you know where I'm going with this, and I'll try to stop and have discussion throughout. Feel free to interrupt at any time, but I'll actually stop because people usually don't interrupt. So I'll start with an overview of DLAB, so to let people know about DLAB, how it started, and what kind of things are done, because it does a lot of different things that aren't always obviously connected. And then a little bit about stepping back and thinking about how to approach increasing energy access in general, and I'll dive into our approach, which is the only approach is the one we see a little bit of a gap in where it matches with our capabilities and our network. And then some examples of work we've done. So DLAB, the mission statement is to cultivate a global network of innovators that create and disseminate technologies to end poverty. Of course, end being a little dramatic, but it's okay. So a bunch of different things. The activities that DLAB does, there's three kind of corners: education, field work, and research. And DLAB started when the founder, Amy Smith, was teaching classes. Originally, I think it was called the Haiti class back in like '99, and that turned into DLAB development. And it's been really her vision and persistence to build DLAB with more and more courses. I think now there's a couple hundred students per year across on the order of 15 classes per year that engage with DLAB. There's also the fieldwork component, which is obviously research, but education is where it started. And then all of the things that kind of fall within this. Along the spectrum of fieldwork and education, you have study abroad, students doing trips to the field as a part of the classes. And then a major fieldwork component is the IDEN, the International Development Innovation Network. And this is USAID funded, part of the Higher Education Solutions Network, acronym. But so the point is there's an institutional part that is anchored in field work. DLAB teaches these design summits as well as capacity building trainings, teaching the design process to people in the developing world. Also the idea of co-creation, bringing together people from industry, academia, local farmers, and metal workers to create things together. Research, obviously we're at MIT, so we have some master's and PhD students interacting as well as undergraduates in Europe's. And where I sit is right here in the Scale-Ups program, which is kind of between research and field work. And so I'll give you a flavor of what the Scale-Ups program does. There's a couple of aspects. The fellowship program is what the Scale-Ups program is most known for. And this is called the Scale-Ups Fellowship, and it is for MIT alum and alumnus of the IDEN Summits, the International Development Design Summits. And it's in order for people that graduate from MIT or from these summits to work full-time on a venture in the developing world. So they'll be, they receive $20,000 in support, and I think most importantly, mentoring, guidance on both technical and business challenges, access to various mentors, and eventually funders to get their investment ready. So it's kind of a launch pad for things towards like Echoing Green or Ashoka, et cetera. The research and action, this is what we're doing here is, this is the part where I fit in primarily, is a lot of generating open source tools, which I'll be talking about some of these tools for people on the ground implementing, as well as direct technical support. So I do some of that, and Dan Sweeney, who a lot of you guys know, focuses on has a deep expertise in cooking, cook stoves as well as cooking fuels, and he does very heavy engagement and direct support with some folks in East Africa on that to help them scale their businesses. And then the Practical Impact Alliance is a newer initiative that brings together multinational corporations, NGOs, governments, and social enterprises for shared learning and action. So we have a conference called the Scaling Development Ventures Conference on March 30th, and these guys all come together. It's open to the public. There'll be emails, I'm sure, through E4Dev about this. So all kinds of good stuff. just wanted to give an overview of what DLAB does because people, and DLAB stands for Development Through Design, Dissemination, and Dialogue. And people also often think that DLAB is a design lab, but it really is focused on international development while teaching design and using the design process as a core part. I guess with Stanford D School, it gets confused sometimes, overlapping with the lab and such. So I want to stop there real quick, and if you have any questions, I'm going to fast. I want to make sure we have pauses here. Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about the Off-Grid Energy Group, which is the work that I do. First, I want to just kind of step back and think about what do we mean by energy access, because different people within different niches within the goal of increasing energy access throughout the developing world have different conceptions of this. We can talk about household electricity, household cooking, small businesses, hospitals, these type of community institutions, community spaces like street lighting, schools, again, artisans, these different kind of things. And so we're kind of thinking, when we're talking about this, who are we thinking of as the people and how they be getting energy access when we're thinking about it. And there's a lot of different ways to approach this. And then what are the goals here? Is for homes, there's these different, I'm not going to read them all, but improving home life in small businesses, there's a lot of opportunity for energy to increase economic opportunity. And in places like hospitals and schools, you can talk about directly increasing educational and health outcomes through energy. Another thing that often gets talked about, and sometimes people have confusion, miscommunications about it, is what does energy access mean? Does energy access mean having a candle or a little bit of electricity to run a light, or does it mean having electricity like we have? So the UN's Sustainable Energy for All initiative has this 5-tier framework that I find quite useful. I think when people talk about solar lanterns, there's kind of a pushback of, oh, solar lanterns, that's not real electricity access. How can you talk about that as if someone has the capabilities, like everyone should have the same electricity access we have in the West, and of course that's a great goal, but getting this level of electricity access to everywhere in the world is probably something that's not going to happen in the next 5 years, to put it mildly. So thinking about these different tiers, about the different levels. So you just have a light, this is called tier 1, moving up to a TV of tier 2, up towards things like refrigerators, and then full, reliable, 23 hours of basically unlimited power access is tier 5. So I just want to put this out there as a kind of a common language. I find it useful. I won't be using these terms too much today, but just put it out there as something that if you're interested, I think it's worth looking up if you're not already familiar with it. This is for household electricity, and there's similar 5-tier frameworks for household cooking, community institutions and community lighting, productive use for businesses, and I also believe for heating, these different frameworks. I think it's just a nice way to think about things because you don't always have to shoot for the moon, and you don't always want to be satisfied with something that's down in tier 1 or 2. So again, kind of still for the big picture, I want to think about, we talk about increasing energy access, what are the goals? And I'll delve into this and how do we achieve them? I think those are two big questions that people in the space have different approaches of what the goal are, whether it's first time electricity access in tier 1 or 2, or full electricity access like tier 5, or various things, or whether the goal is economic opportunity or just the energy access, and how to achieve it through a market-based approach, through a philanthropic approach. And I think most importantly is who decides. Who decides what these goals are and what approach will be taken. And so delve a little bit into each of these points. These are some, and like I want to also mention, and these might not be the only 3 questions. I always have I'm not trying to say anything definitive about the questions or the answers. So when you think about the goals, you can kind of harken a little bit back to that 5-tier framework is what level of energy access is the target, which are households, business, community institutions. And maybe the goal isn't energy access. Maybe the energy access is really only a means to an end. Maybe the real end is economic opportunity or increased health outcomes or education and such. And maybe there's another goal that I didn't manage to write down this week that someone might have as the reason to work in the energy space. I just thought of one. Climate change. So, any others? Let's go. Any other reasons why you guys work in the energy space, either for yourself or what you want to have the impact be of your work? Should have left climate change out.
Gender equality.
Gender equality, right?
Independence.
Independence.
Political power.
Political power, excellent. That's a great one. Yeah. Yeah, that really comes up, I think, also when you're talking about the levels of access, because there's certain, let's say, a giant dam can only be done by certain people, and then you get who decides, and I think that's a really important one, the political power. And having energy access can empower you politically. That's great. It's on video, right? I can use these later. That's a good suggestion. All right, so how to achieve impact? There's a lot of different ways to do this as well. We're at the Institute for Technology, so technology innovation is often a way that people, not the Institute, obviously. Anyway, technology innovation is one way to approach business model innovation. There's a lot, especially technology has driven down costs for things like solar that I'm sure we're all aware of. And I think there's a point right now where the major breakthroughs to increasing energy access for technology, not that it's finished, but there's been so many in the past 5 or 10 years that actually getting those technologies to market is really more of a business problem than a technology problem. And of course, there's more technology that can be made, but it's not always about technology, it's about business. I think most of you guys are very aware of this at this point. There's also, once you have these innovations in place and you have an existing enterprise, that enterprise, you may want to scale it. It's great if an enterprise is, somebody has a business in their community, but maybe they want to reach the region or the country, or to spread to become a multinational company. And then there's another possibility about replication is if you have a company that is a small energy provider in a community and they grow to the region, but maybe for whatever reason their mission or they don't have the capabilities to go multinational. You don't have to start with technology innovation, business model innovation from ground zero in the country next door. You can learn from what's already been these innovations and what's being done and what enterprises are already scaling and look to replicate that and obviously take into account the local context. But we don't always have to start from zero. I have to say that this building didn't get built because someone said, what building would fit the context of Cambridge, and then go in with a laser cutter and start prototyping. It's a build upon human knowledge over millennium, really. So we think a lot about wanting to learn from what's already out there. And then certainly more ways there, and then another kind of, I won't say totally a dichotomy, but different approaches up here is it philanthropy, market-based, there's others. Any other, I want to open that up, if there's anything else you guys can think of that just kind of big picture ways to accomplish these things.
Government intervention.
Yeah, government, yeah, that's a good one. You can go down here.
Microfinance institutions.
Yeah, that's definitely an enabler to pull these things along, yeah.
There's a model from Austria where farmers and scientists got together as cooperatives and build for solar hot water heaters, and that drove the Austrian solar hot heater industry, actually.
Yeah, nice, yeah. Yeah, we would call that co-design. So that's definitely important, and that's something I'll touch on. I got the word local in the title, so we can get in there. Yeah. All right, so I go to my third question, which I think is the most important, really, because the other two questions have multiple answers. And who decides is this kind of conversation that I'd love to have in more depth with you guys offline and in general. It's important to have. But who's making these decisions, and how can we as academics or anywhere we fall along the spectrum contribute to that, put in ideas, but also think about who's taking the initiative. So obviously, people like funders and investors have a lot of control, and this, of course, comes through political power comment. You have businesses. The business may have a a goal, maybe they have a singular product and they want to scale that, or maybe they have a business model and they can plug in any product, and then they're making decisions about what the next steps are for increasing energy access. Obviously, governments is a big player, and academics for generating knowledge and doing studies and trying to figure out what works. International NGOs in many of the countries that DLAB works, I think you guys work, often have a lot of influence as well as presence, and then even getting down to, on a finer level, community organizations and actual consumers and end users. You can have a voice in how energy access is doing. And I guess with consumers and users is a little bit capitalist, but you could also say voters too. It's the same kind of thing. Any others? You guys that I didn't catch? Oh, well, I'd love to continue these conversations in general. So now I'll move on and talk about our process. And again, I want to preface this with, I don't think this is the way. I think it's a way. And we're kind of developed this process based on looking for what I think are gaps in the field. I think there's a lot of funder and investor-driven scaling enterprises, certainly things like academics and others funding these innovations, and NGOs funding innovations. USAID funds a lot of these type of things. Again, defining here. So I'm not trying to say this is one, but I think there's a little bit of a gap. But when I say there's a lot of funders and investors driving the growth of business, I'm saying it's a really good thing. I'm saying a lot of great things are being accomplished. And I'll talk about how I'm looking a lot from the replication perspective and how to build on those things. So we call this off-grid energy toolkit, and you'll see there's a bunch of different components to it, and I think of it as a roadmap for organizations who are rooted in the community to increase energy access in off-grid communities that they are rooted in. So I'll start off with the audience for this is any organization, like wide open, that has a strong presence in the community or the region and has the capability to take action. That's who I'm trying to build these tools and trying to support and to do this work. So those are the two main things. And energy sector expertise is not required. Actually, this process is really designed to bring that information to these organizations that have these two criteria. And if they have the energy sector expertise, they might well be on their way already. So it's certainly not required. We're trying to bring that information from learning for others. That's kind of the replication piece. And just some, certainly not an exhaustive list again, but some of the ones that I have kind of on the top of my head as people who would be users of these. And right now we've done work with, I'll talk about work with the NGO Mercy Corps and this organization Aspirational that I don't know where it exactly falls between civil society and NGO, but that's okay. We don't have to postulate everything perfectly. And also working with some entrepreneurs and businesses in DLAB coming up in the future. I think this could also be useful for things like local governments, and DLAB also works with some multinational corporations, and that might sound a little bit odd. We don't necessarily think of multinational corporations as having a strong local presence. It feels very external, but I still think there's an opportunity when that multinational has a strong community presence. Let's say you have a company in one sector, let's say agriculture, and they just see that energy access is hindering the agricultural sector, and they sell seeds and maybe do trainings on how to do different crop rotations and things. I don't know about, I'm not an agriculture expert. But they know that irrigation is an issue, and they just don't know how to get the energy to irrigation. So this would be a company, even if it's a multinational, that could use this in that community. And so the first step in this process is what I call an energy needs and market opportunity assessment. I want to make this make it very clear that this is not supposed to replace and be redundant with the kind of things the World Bank does as far as doing broad, statistically representative, robust things, so comparing one country versus another, or comparing one country from itself 5 years ago, et cetera. It's much less of a quantitative rigor. It's really focused on this organization rooted in the community, understanding the current energy access, which is kind of what those things capture. So I take a lot of the survey tools that are used by these organizations like the World Bank that are in the UN, they're trying to understand these same ideas, but stripped down, and then putting an extra focus on the aspirational energy needs. It's one thing to know that people don't have X, Y, Z, but just so they don't have it doesn't mean it's what they want. And this comes to the who decides. If we understand what the community really needs, then that's the thing that's probably going to have the greatest market opportunity. So that's really important for that step. And then kind of some learnings from some previous work at D-Lab is it's one thing if you know what people want, and then you come back and analyze data, and then now what do you do? So my thought is to, in the same assessment, while you're on the ground, then let's do a supply chain assessment. Let's understand how goods flow. Well, certainly what's already available, that's kind of wrapped up in the current energy access. I mean, even if a village doesn't have any solar panels in the village, if it's available 2 towns over, that's important to know, because then you may not want to bring something in internationally if it's available locally. That would be redundant. But when I say supply chain, I just mean how consumer goods flow from producers to consumers, because then if you understand that, then you can figure out what types of products may be able to be injected into those types of supply chains and get to the end user earlier. And so, but if you come back to your data analysis, find out, oh, this product would be a good fit because there's this value proposition, then you go back and you're like, all right, now how am I going to get there? You have to do a second trip. That's if it's like externally done. Why not have the organization who's on the ground just assess all these things in kind of one fell swoop, as well as understanding the stakeholders in the energy sector. And so I think one of the most obvious things when it comes to off-grid energy is you don't want to start setting up a mini-grid or selling solar home systems if the grid's coming next year. So that's kind of the low-hanging fruit if you better understand that. But even more than just understanding the kind of the future energy landscape, what stakeholders can be partnered with by the organization who's conducting this assessment. And I really like to think of us as not the people conducting the assessment. So I don't even like to call the people using this tool our local partner. I consider them the center of the ones taking action, and we're supporting. So we're just trying to create a tool for organizations to use in order to help them make decisions and to create programs, and we're support. Yeah. And so what's the goal? Assuming there's a goal. I have an assumption that the goal for this toolkit is to move towards market deployment of something that increases energy access. I have another assumption here is we're looking for market-based solutions. This can involve things that are, whether you call it philanthropy or grants or such and such to catalyze it, but generally the toolkit isn't designed to say, oh, people want these, pick something and then give it away. We're really focusing on how things can be done sustainably through generally market-based initiatives. And there's a whole slew of reasons that you guys are probably aware of, just about sustainability and giving consumers choice that lead towards this decision. Not to say that in certain cases, especially relief, I think philanthropy is extremely important, kind of the only way to go if there's a tsunami or earthquake in the short term. So how do we get there? How do we get from this needs assessment to market deployment? Well, once you understand these items I have up there, now we want to think about what technologies and what business models are suitable for this, and we want to learn from others who've done this. And either it could be as little as next door, one village over. It could be across the world. So we're developing some, but a lot of these too. There's a lot of great work out there. There's things like the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves. There's tons of resources on cook stoves. And it may sound trivial, but pointing an organization who may not have heard to GAC, the Alliance, that's the different names they go by, to the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves, pointing them to that website is a non-trivial thing if someone hasn't heard of it. Letting people know that in certain places people know about solar, and even if it's not in their village, they know they want it and that's what they want to get. But maybe people haven't heard of a solar water pump, they didn't know that was possible. Just letting them know that those are available. So we're looking to create some resources internally, but also a large bit of just curating things. So whoever is using this toolkit, we provide these tools and provide support. We provide information about what technologies exist, and you guys, have, I could go on and on a list of technologies. going up towards things like D-Lab doesn't have expertise in mini grids and microgrids, but we would want to make sure that whoever's conducting this assessment knows that that's an option and can find people who have that expertise. If that's the direction they want to go, and they can go in that direction. And same thing with business models. The same idea is here is if do you want to do a door-to-door or a retail model? You're just learning from what's been happening. Take an example in East Africa. There's a lot of great new things going on with mobile financing and selling electricity as a service, which is pretty common here. But having things like off-grid electric and M-COPA, these ideas of not having someone own the equipment, but having them essentially lease it for the power. These ideas to have people be aware of these so they can implement them. So again, curating, and we're working on some tools that I won't get into about helping organizations choose a business model kind of at a high level. We have one toolkit that we've been working on with the Practical Impact Alliance. That's a questionnaire that an organization fills out about information about their product, about the market, and about their organizational capabilities and priorities. And then it gives a high level of is a proprietary door-to-door model or a shared door-to-door or a shared retail model more appropriate, and then trying to use that to match with case studies to give these examples and really just share that information. So once the organization has done this assessment and has some ideas about programs they might want to implement, before moving straight down to market deployment, it's often a good time to pilot, maybe you need to get investors now. They're in the equation if there's high capital expenses required to start this thing. So maybe you want to do something with a lower investment, maybe something that an organization can initiate on their own without external financial support, and they can validate the technology and business model suitability before kind of going for broke. And then of course we can iterate, like iterating the design process, and it's a good practice to reflect and validate. Sounds like all you have to do is do the pilot and then it works, and that's often not the case. We go back and say that didn't work and try a different technology, try a different business model, and loop around until something that seems market ready comes up, and then we can provide direct support in these areas as well. Really, this whole concept and these tools are all in development. So at the current state, D-Lab's providing direct support throughout the process, but we're really trying to make, especially these three areas, as tight and tidy as possible so that we can kind of put them out there and spread throughout the community and have people just come to this and hopefully take initiative on their own and provide less and less direct support in order to have it be more scalable. So, yeah, that was a lot. Let's go.
So when you're designing a program to promote energy access, are you defining energy access differently each time based on this aspirational energy needs assessment?
Yeah, I would say that I tried less and less, and I'm going to get nuanced on language here, but I tried less and less to design programs. I tried to help the organization design a program. So it's really on that who decides part. We're really trying to give the choice there. So it absolutely is different every time. Sometimes it's the same,
right?
But it's wide open. Yeah, and so I'll use with different organizations. I'll use the 5-tier framework as a common language. Sometimes it's really not necessary because it becomes very clear which direction they want to go in. And let's say just the solar lantern example, we don't need to explain about the next steps if that's not really on the radar of where they have the capability or where they want to take their initiatives. So yeah, different levels. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
So, so this is all good. We want to make sure we, again, step out. Any other questions at this level? Yeah.
I guess a little more concretely, when you talk about a toolkit, like you mentioned, for example, a questionnaire, I think a little bit about surveying, are they all like those types of tools? Is there another sort of like genre resource you provide to people, so to speak?
So this toolkit is the bulk of it, is the one that I put the most effort into. So this consists of tablet-based surveys, semi-structured interviews that would be written by paper, kind of a supply chain mapping process, with, very light, like, oh, here, go to this retailer, ask them. So in the household interview process, when we're looking for these aspirational energy needs and current energy access, we also ask things like, where do you buy products from? Just wide open, so you know where you go to that retailer and you say, who do you sell to, who do you buy from? You go to the wholesaler and you say, who do you sell to, who do you buy from? And you can construct a map, and I'll actually show one of those. So a lot of it is not just a questionnaire, it's the framework and the kind of way to lay out the data, and this is something that I'm kind of in the stages right now, where I'm more and more focused on that as we've piloted the data collection tools, and we found what questions aren't really needed or which ones were broken, and then how we process that data in a way that is you can visualize easy and bring it to the implementation, project conception phase. Trying not to rely on things like SPSS or MATLAB, which I'm not even good at, so maybe that's why I think that we shouldn't focus on it. Yeah, so that, and then here on these, so one thing we did internally is Lighting Global has a great database of what they do quality assurance. The testing is a huge piece in a database. We just made a tool essentially to present that information in a more user-friendly manner. So something simple like that. So instead of looking at 52-page PDFs, we just kind of transcribe that data, put it in a Google spreadsheet, made it public, as well as then taking information of which products are available in which country, and giving information about what distributors sell which products in that country. So really focusing on someone who, if you're a small business in, let's say, Mali, it's all well and good to read a CNN news article, the like 10,000th one on D-Light or Green Light Planet, and then like call them, and they won't return your call because you're too small. And instead, you could go to Total sell these in the gas stations. Maybe I could go there and buy them there. Kind of move that way. So we want to do that. So that's one kind of tool as well. Any other questions? So yeah.
Moving from aspirational wants to actual needs, have you seen that fail? And how do you get beyond that failure if you have seen it fail?
Can you tell me a little more about what you mean, the distinction between wants and needs?
Well, I remember a presentation by someone who was doing cleaner cook stoves in South Africa. And the aspirational need when she went to the village was, why can't I have what I see on TV, which is an electric stove? There's a big difference there.
Yep, there goes, yeah.
And what people want is not necessarily what they need. And as you referred earlier, perhaps energy isn't what it's really about.
Yeah.
It may be about something else. So I'm wondering about the negotiation of that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take an example of kind of these productive use technologies. This is a bit jargony. This is basically something that where energy is increasing economic activity either in the household or in the business. Is this kind of productive use term. So when we do the assessment of the aspirations for productive use stuff, we think of it not on a technology basis, but an activity basis. So for instance, if someone says, I need irrigation, we think about that being the need. Right now, you may be carrying buckets of water, probably not. That's a lot of work for irrigation. Or for water for your home. Say, I want clean water, you want, and then we try to see, is it an energy problem or is it a chlorine problem? That's something we have to kind of pass off. But so by focusing on the activity and the goal and not the product, I think is how we hopefully kind of move past and kind of avoid that conflict we're talking about. So plowing comes up and people say, I want a tractor. But then even if that's what they say, you say, what's the hardest thing in your day? Plowing. What do you want? A tractor. The organization can step back and say, okay, this is what they have, this is where they want to go, but the why is really important. And the why is it's a pain in the butt to plow. And maybe you don't need a tractor, maybe you need a better plow and try to fit in there. But then you run into the issue you have of where you really wanted the tractor and how do you kind of sell this thing. But I think if you're really understanding the activity and the fundamental need, I think it's possible to slip in that gap. But I think it's that frame of the activity.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll try to go through this fairly quickly. So the inputs, is I just like to write out these theories of change. Obviously the need is something related to energy access and the impacts are way down here. But the things that we're inputting are the toolkit and support. The organization who is implementing this thing and is on the ground is obviously having their inputs as well. So I don't want to leave those out, but this is what we're inputting. And the outputs we hope for is for this local organization to conduct the assessment And we also want to increase the capacity of the local personnel by reading these tools and hopefully going through this process. People are able to think about what energy access is, how to accomplish it, learn about different technologies and business models. There's a capacity building component, as well as another huge output is we really action oriented is we want, excuse me, the identification of programs that can be implemented. Because one of those, remember, 2 criteria I had is for who should be using this is someone who can take action. So these are the outputs and kind of the outcomes, moving kind of next down the ladder as we move forward. We want sustainable market-based initiatives to increase energy access. We want increased economic activity, increased energy access, these things. And the long-term impacts, which are the ones that DLAB, we don't quite get into measuring anything down this far, but things like improved health, education, quality of life, et cetera, economic opportunity. So again, this is kind of the things that I'm looking at as for the reason to do this work. But I always reach back to who decides what this theory of change is, and we'll be continually getting input from the people we work with, the implementers, to make sure that the toolkit is going where they want it to go as well. Any questions? Okay, so now we'll get to the concrete part. So I'll stop even harder now, so I'm going to move on to the concrete stuff. If you want to ask any questions right now on the kind of ideas. It's better to get to the concrete stuff. So one organization we partner with is Aspirational. This is a longtime DLAB partner. They've been in working in El Salvador primarily in the areas of community and visual health for over 40 years. We've partnered with DLAB mostly through the DLAB classes for the past 3 or 4. I think Libby talked about their most recent trip there in January last week here. And so they also have some youth education, some microcredit, and they serve urban and rural communities. And so how did I come to be working with them on this assessment? The DLAB energy students were down there, and they go down and do a whole host of different projects, and they identified that there were some household energy needs in one village. So El Salvador is one that has, I think, well over 97, more like, I think 97% rural electricity access and 99% for the country. So off those high ones, not your typical place to do offered energy assessment, but it's one of those where they said there's this village, it has 500 people, and they don't have any energy access, and Aspirational are interested, and they work in this community already, interested in trying to help, particularly in lighting and phone charging, what technologies can be brought in. So we did a very quick 3-day assessment. The students had already done some baseline energy access stuff, so asking what do you use for light, how much do you spend, knowing these kind of things. So I came in more focused on the supply chain and the stakeholders in August, and then we're engaging them in the project design process. In this case, it was very early in me developing the toolkit, so I did work through a translator for conducting the assessment, which is not typically the way I do it. I typically try to have the local organization be conducting the interviews without me needing to be there. So quickly, some of the results. You can kind of see. All right. Okay, so $2 a week on kerosene for the households. They're walking 15 to 20 minutes to charge their cell phones for a 25-cent fee. Some residents are doing carry a car battery down to where there's the grid and bring it back up. That idea has been around a long time. Individuals are like, I did it for a couple 6 months, and maybe the World Cup was on, and do for that. So it's clearly not something that's gaining traction. It's like a solution to electricity access. But there's clearly awareness of what electricity can provide, but that's not a long-term solution. And Aspirational already has a clean cooking program, so kind of didn't address that because they know what they're doing there. So we didn't even ask questions about cooking because they've got that one covered. So the supply chain, there's something really interesting here, is that the residents are in this northern village, and there's basically one road running down through a series of towns to a large city. Nobody shops at any of the towns along the way to the large city. And that was interesting because you think, oh, it's closer, when did it be convenient? Well, all the residents in this village work on a plantation, and they collect their pay, or at least one member of the family works on the plantation for all the villages. And they collect their pay every 2 weeks in the city. And we did the supply chain mapping, well, we just skipped that, and we said, who do you sell to? at the retailers. We went right by the local retailers, we went to the wholesalers, and they said, who do you sell to? They said, all these villages along the way. And we said, the same people selling. Oh wait, it's the margins on why the people in El Salce don't shop at the villages along the way, because they're buying from the same guy down in the city. So why pay the margin? They correctly assess that all the products are a little bit more expensive when it's near their home. They're going every 2 weeks, they're picking up the money in the city, they never even bring half the money home, they just spend it right there, boom, back up. So it's actually a pretty efficient way to shop. Kind of doing your 2-week shopping trip. So why that's important is it basically said local retail is a no-go for energy products. Even if you were bringing it direct in and cutting out that middleman somehow, the perception would be that this is expensive, especially when you come in with something like a solar lantern that's going to be one of the more expensive. And we asked in those local shops, what is the most expensive thing you sell? Numbers coming out like $5, $8, $10. You're going to bring in a $20, $40 product and expect someone to buy it when they think that this place has a lot of markups, like no way. So we eliminated, and so that's just a really important thing, so you can just throw the whole retail side of business models out. That just allows you to narrow down and focus. Yeah, so stakeholders, this landowner, this kind of comes to is the grid coming? This landowner does not care. They've been trying to get the grid for decades and decades. Not going to happen. You can judge him. I didn't either, but it didn't seem like very nice. 99% electrification in the country. You can't. Not good. So, and the other main stakeholder, in a more positive note, is that churches are the dominant community institution in El Salce. And I'll talk about why this was important for moving forward. So these are kind of these like high-level broad strokes that we come with the assessment. We don't need super fine-grained data. I mean, there's a little more data than just this slide behind it, but not a ton of like super statistical stuff. We just need to know roughly $2. What's the spread? What other things are going on here? So one project idea was solar lanterns for households. All of you guys are probably familiar with this, and we talked yesterday about this price. The margin here, the cost between 40 and 70, there's a lot of, these aren't available very much in El Salvador. It's not a robust supply chain, so the prices are a lot higher than you get even on Amazon here or in developing countries with a robust solar lantern market. And phone charging capabilities. People wanted both light and phone charging. So what kind of project was conceived? Is next steps, the pilot usage of the lanterns among the households. So I had brought down, I had a little bit of a head start on this one because the students were there, we had this idea. So I brought down 2 lanterns, left them with Aspirational, and they piloted, they rotated in these various households throughout over a 15-week period. So I think every household got to have one of them. There's only 30 households in this village. Got to try it out for a week. And so now we know that they like them, and they say they'd pay for them. So right now we're trying to figure out the best vendor, which again is not trivial because the shipping costs when you're not doing bulk are pretty penny. And also ProStar has a microfinance program, so this is where leveraging the existing capabilities of the implementer is really was valuable. I've been doing a project in Morocco on microfinance, and I was all prepared to tell them this is the way you could finance it, and they're like, I kind of told them some options, like, oh, do we have to do that? Can we do it this way? We got all these other better ideas. And I was like, yeah, you got it. I'm not talking about microfinance anymore. But this is basically what came up, and that was kind of more nuance of like group versus individual loans and such. But this is the basic idea, is if you have this thing that costs $70, and you spend $8 a month on kerosene, it pays itself in 9 months, and over the life cycle, whether it lasts 2 or 5 years, you save this much money. So it's a clear value proposition. Just want to make sure that that's there before you start driving something forward. So we're, like I said, just trying to identify the right vendor and get them in there. And Aspirational is ready to take this program and kind of out of my hands, which is the way I want it to be, is let them move forward and provide support when needed. So the church, it was really interesting. We were at the church, and they were spending $6 a week on kerosene and activities, 7 days a week for 3 or 4 hours a night. Very, very vibrant part of the community. The parishioners are in the same village. They're walking 15, 20 minutes still. They charge cell phones for a 25-cent fee. They said that they sometimes do the TV and DVD player with the battery they're carrying, but they'd like to do that on a more regular basis to show. They have a couple of DVDs of, it's like the Ascension of Mary with those movies. They're like, we want to watch movies about Jesus and Mary. So it's just the DVDs, not even the reception. And then also they want to have a microphone and amplifier. We get this big old cello thing and lots of music and stuff. So they want to made even louder in this pretty small church. I was like, you really, it's a pretty small church, but they want to rock out. So that's on the list. So solar power and lighting system identified company here, and this is, we aren't necessarily going to have to go with this one, but we just to put out the value proposition, $250 plus shipping. It's like $200 if I bring it straight from Thailand when it's made. So working on that. It has 5 volt, 12 volt outputs. You can run this. They have this charging bank, a TV, and you can buy TVs in El Salvador that run off 12 volts. So this is the TV and DVDs, but it don't have to be outsourced. We again map that in the supply chain. Lights that are, it's going to be a better situation than a single light. You have 4 lights that are less bright spread around. So I'm pretty confident we do light testing that it'll be a better lighting situation. So next steps, again, this is really the vendors, the sticking point with this one. And the leadership changed since the assessment in August. We have to re-engage. So this one's kind of on the back burner, mainly because of this point. We're trying to get the solar lanterns in, get some sensitization to these type of products, and then try to come in with it's a larger, being like at least 350 once we get it there. And then the same thing, do the microfinance program, and they got that covered. So that's that one. Let's stop there for some questions. I'm running. We're going 7:30, right? It's an hour and a half. Huh?
Yeah. So they don't power the things in the church today, right? They want to power those.
They want to, yeah. So they sometimes do the car battery thing,
Yeah.
but it's clearly not a long-term solution because people go in and out with that. Yeah.
Boston Area Solar had a meeting last Thursday talking about.
I saw that.
a
Yeah,
project in El Salvador,
Mhm.
which is basically a solar farm
Mhm.
that they want to set up, 5 megawatts.
Yeah.
You know, so they're looking for funding, which would be interesting to.
Yeah, there's a lot of, some of the folks we talked to, we were looking to try to find local solar lantern vendors. It's really more focused on actually people going off grid.
Right.
There's a very high sustainability consciousness, if that's a sentence. People care about the environment.
And the government has a solar goal that they want to do, so
Mhm.
they're going to do I guess, an announcement of who they're going to fund
Mm-hmm.
in June or July, something like that.
Cool.
So,
Yeah. So that was a quick one. The ASA ProSAR one. Wanted to test the tool. I had this work with Mercy Corps set up as our main. The big first pilot. So a little bit about Mercy Corps. They're an international NGO. They've been 4 years in Mali, and the interesting thing about them is they generally go places when there's a crisis, and then they leave when it gets better. So in 2012, there was a terrible war in Mali that's still ongoing between the north and the south, and Islamic extremists, and it's a mess. So Mercy Corps is like, all right, let's go, which is that's their prerogative. So it's a bit different than other organizations that often pull out, and that ended up being a major point of the stakeholder analysis that I'll talk about, even within the country, within regions within the country. So their main activities, some direct cash transfers and some lending microfinance programs. And again, this is a very critical, urgent situation. It's really in some ways it's a relief situation. They do peace building and entrepreneurship training. So they're bridging, their philosophy is to bridge this gap between immediate disaster relief. They come in like after the Red Cross and then try to help go from this transition from relief to longer term development goals. They have field offices in the north where there are significant security concerns. So this picture of me is only in one place in the south that they threw on, where they actually don't have an office. They're looking to understand the south a little bit better, and also for me to be able to work in the field at all. And so it's not like it's a race thing, let's put it that way. It's not like I have more security issues. It's basically like white people